good evening, and happy Tuesday to all of my amazing followers who are always here with us. It is a great day today. We were not here last Tuesday. We had a special evening. I had to attend graduation for an amazing little girl. So we were off for the day, but we are back today, and I'm super excited because I always love when I have return guests. Special much to me. So today's topic is express yourself, which means normally what we do is get our audience members, they come on and they guide how our day will go. Well, today we're doing express yourself a little bit differently. Today I have left the show in the hands of our executive producer, and he's going to surprise us with our topics. What we are going to do is review past shows that were seen that you guys just gave us so much amazing feedback from. And we're going to talk about them with a guest who was not part of any of those shows so that she can give us her opinion on the shows that come up. So before we get into that, let's do as we always do. If you or someone you know is dealing with some form of domestic violence, whether it's a loved one, a family member, a partner, a schoolmate, someone that you know that you care deeply about and you do not want hurt, if they are dealing with some form of domestic violence, make sure that they reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. You can also reach us at loveshouldnothurt.com or all and any of our social media platforms. The last time we were here, we were speaking about abusive friendships. And unfortunately, Facebook threw us off. We had a little bit of issues with it, but it stayed on YouTube, and we appreciate all of you who followed up, went and watched the show. But don't worry, we may talk about that topic tonight. Tonight, I want to welcome on an amazing guest who has been here before, and it is a big, huge part of my life. She is someone who I have all of these types of conversations with on a almost everyday basis. She is joining me on the screen. She is one of my best friends and probably the closest person to me at this point. My best friend, one of the people I love most, Evelyn Ramos. Hello, Booski. Your microphone is muted, so I'm glad you're just smiling and not speaking.
That's all I'm doing today.
There you go.
I had to mute it because, there could be some random noise that come in, but hopefully that'll stay under control. Hi,
how are you tonight?
I'm fantastic. I'm so excited. This is going to be really exciting because I feel like I did watch your shows, but some of them were a while ago. So it's going to be nice to rewatch it and kind of get myself all riled up again.
I like that it'll get you riled up. And I think that's always what's so exciting about the Express Yourself show, because it's like all hands on deck, whatever it is you want to say, whatever you see, you speak about. And you, more than anyone, are someone who will watch the show. And then when we get off and we're together, we have conversations about it. And you're like, I like this pack. And oh my God, you should have spoken about this. And this is how I feel about this. So tonight you get to rewatch whichever one he throws up. We don't know. He's going to throw them up at any random time. And well, he's not going to do it random. He's going to throw the videos up random. Hopefully he won't do it at random time when we're in the middle of speaking. He's going to throw up random ones and they're going to play. And then when we come back, we're going to hear what you have to say and what your opinion is on them. So Ray, let's rile her up for the first one. You choose whatever that subject is. Even more so because of victim blaming, because people are worried if I put up something negative, what are people going to say? A few months ago, someone, actually two people at the exact same time, tagged me in a post on TikTok. And it was a woman who was live. She was in her home. Everything behind her was shattered. The TV, her clothes was ripped off. She was holding a baby. She was crying. She was beat up. And she said, I'm on here because I know people are watching and I'm looking for help. I wrote under that post immediately, I don't know where you're located. I'm in Philadelphia. Call this number. I can give you help. She said he had just broke the TV over her face. She needed help to get out of the home. She was scared he was in the area. 90% of the comments were bashing her. 90% of the comments were saying, you stupid, why are you on social media putting your business out there? If he did that to you, oh, you must have been a shitty mom. Like all of the comments that I was seeing were so negative. And I'm like, why are they blaming her? I don't care if I am PMSing and I have the worst attitude in the world when I wake up. That doesn't mean that because I gave you an attitude or I was snippy, that gives you the right to take a frying pan and slap it over my head. That doesn't mean that because you didn't like the way that I responded to you, you take the TV and bash it on my forehead. And I think that we don't realize in society what we do. Oftentimes we're quick to pass that judgment like, well, if he did it, she deserved it. I mean, I've heard people say, and it makes me sad sometimes, people who follow me and are friendly with me will say, I follow what you do. I love what you do. And then we'll be somewhere out and like a guy will smack a woman or something and they'll be like, I like what you do, but she deserved that. Like, you see what she's wearing? And I'm like, really? So because they went to a club and she left the house in a skirt that he didn't like, you agree with me in what I do on my platform. But damn, she deserved it because she should have left the house like that. He didn't like it. And to the people watching, it may seem small, simple, but it isn't. It is those things that have us where we are today. It is those things that make people not want to say, I'm being abused. What's happening at home to me is major because we're so scared of those individuals who victim blame. They'll turn around and say, but he told you not to wear it. Why'd you just wear something different? That's a subject that you and I speak about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I know that it's something that we've had a lot of conversations. So before I even give an opinion, tell us what you think about that.
You know what? I think that your conversation was really great in identifying what people do. And what I've kind of learned in life, and I'm trying to carry over in many of my own actions, is stop complaining about it as much, if that means anything, and start doing the educating, which is what your platform does. And it's really hard because that's a lot of years of ingrained thinking in these people. It's so hard. And I was guilty of that. In my youth, there were definite times where I was like, oh, she must have done something to deserve that, because it's what I grew up hearing, and not to insinuate that I lost a lot when I was a kid or experienced a lot of really bad things. It's just so ingrained in a lot of the thinking that I think platforms like this will help people who are our age, older, coming up to our age, and kind of redirect those behaviors and say, shoot, I did that and I shouldn't have been, and that's not right. And then we teach our youth, our girls, our guys, what the appropriate behaviors are for those kind of things, what to accept and what not to accept. But yeah, man, when we talked about it on so many different levels for other instances where we were like, it is unbelievable. This person's in the hospital or this person is dead. And what we're doing right now is we're deciding to put all of our efforts into calling her a whore or shaming her or putting her down. She must have done something to piss him off. And it's, for me, I think what we're doing is we also are saying that violence is okay. Mm-hmm. And many of us grew up around violence, and violence was the answer. You disrespect me, I fight you, I hit you, I slap you.
Right.
So we just carry that over into relationships. I feel really passionate about it. I mean, it's even times I say it and I'm hoping that my daughter is picking it up when I'm saying, it's really not her fault. But it's so unnerving. I can't believe it sometimes. But I do agree. Look at that. We do have to educate our youth. Look at that, because, there's so many of us our age that I hate to say, but you're like, it is what it is. We can't change how they feel. We can't change how they behave, but we can change our exposure to them.
Absolutely. I think that we together went through this form of this experience. I mean, when we lost the person that we knew on Facebook, we had to mute a bunch of people. We literally had to block folks and just say, I'm not getting on Facebook during this time, because after her death, it was like a battle between people who went from people feeling sorry about the situation to people who were on the other party's side, like, well, she did something and she must have done something. And it's like, neither you nor me nor them nor anybody else knows what took place. But at the end of the day, a life was taken. So you're telling me there's something as small as, and I'm not saying this is what happened, but I'm giving an example. Something as small as you think I went out on a date with someone else gives you the right to take my life. Yeah. And it happens all the time. Like, not just domestic violence, but like rape and other forms of abuse. That's the norm for things like rape. Like, well, do you see how she goes to the club? Her boobs are always out. And her skirt is always short. What the hell does that mean?
And it's in all forms of violence too. Like, this young man that was recently killed, and they took his motorcycle, and it was like, well, people probably thought it was a motorcycle, I would have done it too. And it's like, we're starting to get so used to and desensitized to being violent and breaking the law that it's kind of always blaming that person for deserving what they get to happen to them.
Yeah. And it's a shame because we're living in a time and age, we're in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not that it was okay back then, but I mean, we should be progressing, but we're regressing. Instead of getting better, it feels like it's getting worse. Like, people see things like this and they see TV and they see the violence on the news and they see different things. And instead of now educating ourselves more, and it's like, wow, we're in a different time. Yeah, we're definitely in a different time. A time where now you should be learning right from wrong. I mean, it should go without saying.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, it's like, come on.
Yeah. And I think social media plays a role in it too, man. Like,
huge role.
There's so many things that we see video wise. I mean, again, harking back to this young man, I mean, there were so many videos of his death, and it was on social media. It wasn't on regular media outlets, and we're sharing them as if that's nothing. So there's definitely a lot of desensitization with that. And then it's like, we're sharing things and talking about it in ways. I hope it gets better. Sometimes I hear conversations our kids have, and I'm like, I would have never had the brains to have half of the conversations and some of the gall and grit that they have. So, I mean, I guess we just got to do, I think I saw a comment that said we got to educate our youth. We do, because a lot of the older folks they're lost causes with stuff like that. But I hope that they see things like this. And and I'm going to step back on that, because I'm not as young as I look. But I said that I used to think that. I used to have these thoughts. So you know what? You can learn and you can be better if you want to be. The desire to do it has to be there. Some people don't have a desire for it.
Right. I know that with Express Yourself, we try our best to communicate with the audience if they have questions. I see that Louis Covitier, I'm not sure if you're still here, Louis, but if you were here, please do say. He asked the question, can I say something? So if you want to say something, feel free to ask the questions. That is what the Express Yourself episode is about. We would ask for all of the audience members, if you have questions or things that you would like to share, we will put it up on the screen so that you can interchange with us so that we can speak. Before he does that, I have a question. It says from Love Shouldn't Hurt, but I'm sure that this is our producer posing the question. How does victim blaming affect society?
Wow. I feel like there's no way to answer that in just the next couple minutes we have. It's overarching. It affects everything. It affects, gosh, I'm gonna feel like I'm doing like a lecture. Like, our socioeconomic it's gonna affect our neighborhoods. It's gonna affect our youth. It's gonna affect opportunities given to other people. It's going to be ingrained in probably the other subjects we're going to talk about in terms of being feminist and fair for everything else. It has a greater implication than just hurting the person that they're talking about, because there's people around in the periphery hearing the things that are being said and kind of thinking of the things that they're thinking and trying to balance that out. I mean, whether or not people feel safe to defend people, I feel like that's the case too. Like, do you feel safe to sit and say that wasn't the right thing to say? Because what if that person is equally as violent? So I think it has overarching. I mean, what do you think, like, some of the effects of society would have?
I feel like society at this point, I think we are a society of, unfortunately, a lot of more followers than we are of leaders. And I think that a lot of people kind of don't want to go against the grain. And they kind of feel like, if this group of people feels that way, I don't want to be the outsider. So I could be in a circle group at work that feels one way, and then I can be in a circle of friends that feel another way. And then I can sit on one of my board meetings and those people feel one way. And it's like everybody, because of the different opinions within society, we all decide, unfortunately, because of where we are, what our answer would be. So I might have, and I'm not saying me, but as in general, people may feel like I feel this way, but I want to go with the group because I don't want to go against the grain. Because I think society is built right now, unfortunately, on a lot of people just following what everybody else does. And it's a shame. And I think that, we try as our organization to kind of just say, this is how we feel. And this is what we feel about domestic violence. We're not changing it. We're against it. We're totally against what people feel. But that's just us as an organization. We're just one organization in Philadelphia, but there could be other people who feel differently. How much backlash do I get for what it is that I do? People don't think that what we do is appropriate or something that we should discuss all the time. I think that victim blaming is huge because some people don't have their own opinions a lot of times, and
Yeah.
especially in our society now, because people want to do what others feel. It says society believes that public, publicly scrutinizing a person's dress, mental state, motives, and history is okay to do due to others making it okay. Absolutely. That's what
Yeah.
we unfortunately have become accustomed to.
Yeah.
We've made it okay.
Yeah.
Like you watch Law and Order SVU, right? That talks about all forms of like different sexual abuse, right? And
Mhm.
that's all you see on the show. Well, what
Yeah.
was she wearing? Her skirt was too short. And even if they don't bring it up, look at the women that they show when they're portraying the women that get raped in clubs and stuff. It's the women whose shirts are like this or the skirts are really small because that's what people believe is what calls it out or draws it. Not the fact that this person is sick and that they already had in their mind that they want to rape someone or hurt someone, but because she had that skirt on and because
Mhm.
her
Mhm.
cleavage was too much, it was her fault. That's
Yeah,
what
and
was ingrained in her.
I think you make a good point with that, and I think people also remember that this idea of having the victims back is really new. I mean, we're talking that 20 years ago there were videos that existed for. I saw something where they interviewed men who raped women to ask them what made them rape women instead of talking to the women and seeing what their experience was like, and that was like 20 years ago. I mean, it's so new. So it's also got to remind ourselves that there's a lot of work to be done because there's a lot of
Yeah.
undoing. There's years, hundreds and years of undoing that needs to get done. There's
Definitely.
religious parts that are part of this, right? A lot of people have religious belief. A lot of people have political beliefs.
Right.
So you already know you can't undo it by just being someone who's bright and gets the point. You have to. It takes work. It takes a lot of work.
It does. It does. So I knew that would be a subject that you definitely want to speak about because I know that we have this conversation and we've had it for years, even before I did this, about victim blaming in society in just different genres. Our beautiful, beautiful, handsome executive producer, surprise us. What is our next video?
This is fun.
Could someone's past trauma affect them right now? So I think that everything always coincides, especially when you're on. Generational trauma, if people don't understand what that means, is exactly what I stated. Your parents may have dealt with some form of, whether it's domestic violence, sexual abuse, or racism, whatever the case may be. And then it's passed down to the next person and the next person. I watched a few videos today and I read a few articles trying to just always research and figure things out. And one of the videos that I watched was, the topic was, how do I deal with generational trauma, not knowing that I even have suffered this? And I think that that's all of us, we have no idea. And I think that even with domestic violence and the things that I've dealt with personally, I've had moments where I'm just like, I feel like my mom dealt with this too. And I feel like I'm living in some of the same things that she dealt with. So I think that it's just something that all of us, at some point, it all encompasses, what we all have dealt with in our past.
Yeah. And one piece that most articles don't talk about is that you don't have to have experiences directly, right? So I was having this conversation today with a friend, and we were just having a everyday girlfriend conversation. And she shared something with me that her mother told her that happened to her when she was 2 years old. And she's like, something traumatic. And she's like, why are you telling me this now? And you never told me before. Right. And her mom said, because I was traumatized by the experience. I thought you were, she thought that she would lose her daughter when she was 2 years old due to like an illness or something. So she kind of like did not want to deal with it. But then she said to me, it made so much sense why she behaved the way she behaved and the way she interacted with me. And even the way I interact with my daughter. Never did I know where it was coming from. So it kind of hits what you were just saying. Like, it's not that clearly, like my mother went through this or my father went through this or my grandmother went through this. And I even think that April, when we spoke with her and we interviewed her, shared some of that, right? Where she didn't know about the traumas her both parents separately went through. Right. But now writing her book and talking to them, it's like, oh, and by the way, this happened to me. And this, which definitely plays a part in how they parented her.
Generational trauma.
Oh, big snap to Amanda, man. Love her. I love when she comes on.
Yeah. My girl's got some knowledge and she drops it.
Yes. You always come out of there feeling like you had a session.
Yeah. Generational trauma is something that I don't think that we realize we're dealing with it. But then when you look back at it, you're like, And we said it
Yeah.
during that show, like, it doesn't always have to be trauma. I think that we live with parents, guardians, whoever, and we get older and we do things and we're like, oh, wow, that was just like my mom. That was something
Mhm.
my mom did. So generational trauma, it's like they've dealt with some form of depression or abuse or something. And then we start to deal with it and we're like, wait a minute, my
Mhm.
mom dealt with this.
Mhm.
And as I remember, my grandmom did too. So it kind of like, it's like a ripple effect when you throw the stone across the pond and it just like ripples. I
Yeah.
kind of feel like that's what generational trauma looks like. It's kind of like it started here and then here and then here. And sometimes we don't even realize that we've carried that trauma with us.
I agree, and I'm paying attention because I'm looking in my old notes because we had a speaker come in many moons ago and at LaSalle, and he talked about the different forms of trauma. And it's interesting. What I really loved about this, and I kind of will go back to him, was I really liked how she connected that, and also how this generational trauma probably coincides with what we just talked about with victim blaming, right? Like things that we saw as kids that we thought what was normal or heard that was normal, and we carry that over, and that becomes now our trauma. But back to my original point, this speaker that came, he like did a whole thing with us, didn't use PowerPoint, didn't do any kind of, he was from like Switzerland, and had a whole session talking about trauma. And he essentially defined that trauma doesn't have to be something violent, and violence doesn't have to be something where you're bleeding or you're hurt from it.
Right.
It's just something that can affect you. And I think that we try so hard sometimes to define what it is that we're traumatized by, or what it was, what's been a traumatic event for us or others, that we sometimes can lose sight that it doesn't have to be really like a huge thing. It can be like an indirect form of trauma, like Amanda said. And I mean, there've been times in conversations I've had partake in and been a part of and heard and been like, wow, I walked away from them feeling really crappy right now. And I'm holding on to that. And now I've just developed a trauma over hearing something that might have affected my mom.
Yeah.
But I think it's really great and invaluable to have these conversations, because sometimes people feel like we have to be so tough that we don't have trauma.
Yeah.
Nothing traumatizes me. I'm rough and tough and from this part of the city, and then you realize, but then they start to behave in ways where you're like, yeah, there's things going on. There's some trauma that you're not dealing with that's affecting everything else.
Yeah. And indirectly, I think it happens more than anything because I think I come and I've been very honest and open for the past 2 years about my life and my whole experience. I think half the world who watches knows everything about me. But I come from not put together family.
Mm-hmm.
I love both of my parents. I love them both dearly. They worked really hard to make sure that we were okay. But I came from a father in the past who suffered from alcoholism, and I came from a mother who suffered from anxiety and depression. And, my sisters and I have moved on in life. My oldest sister, she has a business degree. She's an amazing, she's a housewife now, but she went and got her business degree. She's had a great career, in her life. Now she's a housewife and she's a phenomenal mother. Her kids are amazing, A students in college doing great, but she has her own form of trauma that she has brought with her from the past, differently than from I have. My other sister is a nurse practitioner, does very well for herself, travels the world speaking engagements. I mean, is one of the top people at Temple, has a great career, but she has trauma that she's brought with her that sometimes we've seen. And I myself, I'm a school counselor. I counsel kids. I have my own business. I have now my nonprofit, but I have plenty of trauma. And people don't want to admit to that. They want to say, I'm good. Like, I don't have any issues. I'm fine. And it's not about having issues. It's just, first of all, as a part of life, I think nobody is living a perfect life. I mean, unless you're walking across water, I think we all have had some form of craziness, whether it was directly us or our parents or something. And, I've noticed now with myself, I've had moments where I've, to be totally honest, like I just had moments where I'm doing things with my daughter and I'm just crying afterwards in my room. And I'm like, why am I so sad? Like, what is wrong with me? She's fine. She has a roof over her head. She's taken care of. And I feel like my mother at that moment. And I think to myself, wow, I'm a lot like her. There's things that she dealt with and personalities that she displayed as I was growing up, and I would see her sitting in her room crying because I knew she was a single mom and she was struggling to do it on her own. And now that I'm older and I'm a single mom and I have my moments that it may not be great, perfect, or whatever, I feel the same thing. And I'm like, it's not like she said, here you go, I'm passing it on to you. But it's generational trauma that has followed us throughout the years.
I agree. And I think we need to normalize it.
Right. Absolutely.
Let's take the stigma out of it. You know, if you've had trauma in your life, there's a really good chance every single person you come in contact with or speak to or know has had it too. And we're just not sharing it. Like you said, we're just keeping it tough. And if once we can normalize it and say, it's okay to not be okay all the time.
Right.
You know, it's okay. You know, one of my favorite things that people love to do is like when they say, hey, how you doing? Wouldn't it be funny if you really just told them how you're doing that moment? Because, you know, all of us are like, I'm good. You keep going, you know, or you don't even pay any attention. You just say, yeah, I need this. I mean, it's so common for us to do that. And really, it would be interesting if you just be like, well, had a really rough day today.
Yeah, you know, they do it in movies sometimes, or what movie was that? I think it was I don't know if it was Liar Liar or one of them with Jim Carrey where his son like just wish he told the truth.
Yep, that was
so
it.
Like every question they asked him, he was like, no, like it's a shitty day. Or no, like, you know, can you imagine if that's the world that we lived in, that one day somebody was just like, I want everybody to just tell the truth. And you see me in the mall and it's like, how are you? And I'm like, I am so broke. There's no money in my pocket. My electricity got cut off yesterday. It would be a different world from what we live in now, because so many people walk around and they put on these facades, as I say. I tell my daughter all the time, you look at social media and sometimes you get jealous from what you see other people have. Oh, they have the newest J's and they got a brand new car. And I'm like, you ain't got no idea what they did to get those J's and who they knew or what money they had to borrow to get that car. For myself, like people, it's funny. And I had this conversation today and I have it with you and a lot of people all the time. People see my social media and oftentimes their responses are, oh my God, you're always out. Girl, you living the good life. And I'm like, you only post on social media the positive things. Nobody's ever going to post on social media, my boyfriend's cheating on me, my boyfriend left me, my electricity got cut off yesterday, my daughter can't afford to go to school. Nobody's posting that. So of course to you, I live this amazing life because I put pretty pictures up and you see me dancing on a Thursday night. Most days I'm sitting on my sofa with my daughter watching TV, like on a Saturday night, just doing nothing. But because that's what people see, this facade of who they think I am, they think, oh my gosh, she's great. I'm not always great and I'm not always out. But because what you put on social media is always positive, that's what people think. And I tell my daughter all the time, don't believe what you see all the time, because even though the pictures are always painted beautiful, you have no idea what's going on behind people's house doors. None.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Especially all of these Instagram models and their perfect bodies and all these other things that come with that. I couldn't agree with you more.
Photoshop exists. They forget face apps exist. So you take the arrugas away. Oh my gosh, she's got perfect skin. You would see me without my makeup. I do not look this good.
I can vouch for that. I can vouch for that. I got the pictures on my phone.
Oh, thank you, Fish. We see you. I miss you too, love. I hope you're feeling good. We are almost at the 30-minute mark. So as per always, what I always do, remind folks why we are here, even though we were having this subject. Please remember, if you or someone that you love, someone that you know, someone that you come in contact with is dealing with domestic violence, whether it's yourself, a friend, a family member, a foe, please have them reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. You can reach us on any of our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you can reach us at our website at www.loveshouldnothurt.com. Ray, let's give us another video. The shame, especially for a young lady who's, you know, you're growing up, you're learning about the world and life, and to know that you're already at 13 experiencing what women for ages have had to deal with is really, really disheartening. It really is disheartening. I want to get into the next subtopic because I know that it's something that's super passionate about you. When I read it on your notes, I was kind of surprised that you spoke about it. But I'm okay with that because as I make moves to do things to help others, I think that you, as a 13-year-old and being who you are, you can do the same. So the next subtopic under beauty standards that you spoke about and wanted to touch on was weight. A lot of people have a lot of expectations about weight, and that was something that you wrote that you wanted to speak about. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts, your experiences, and how you feel.
The topic of weight is a very touchy topic, and it's for women and men, but mostly women, because there's society has these outrageous beauty standards that make us feel that the only way to be beautiful is being skinny or having a small waist and a big butt, and that your stomach has to be flat, and that you can't eat too much carbs if you're wearing a bathing suit, or you can't eat this and you can't eat that because it'll make you gain weight. And they make us scared of gaining weight and having a bigger stomach, and we feel alienated when we don't look like the beauty standards, and we decide to do outrageous things to put ourselves into those beauty standards just so we can fit in, including me. I have an eating disorder, and I tried, and I've hated myself because I wanted to be skinny, and I wanted to look like every other girl that I see on social media. But now I'm starting to realize that I shouldn't have to feel like that the only beautiful is skinny, because it's not. You can have a stomach and be beautiful. Your stomach does not
define
you. It doesn't define your worth. What you eat does not lower your worth. Nothing, your food does not do anything to you. And if you gain weight, so what? It's not going to hurt you in a year. And the doctors might tell you, oh, you're overweight or it's unhealthy. Okay. You could start working out and eating better, but that doesn't mean you have to lose.
That's a toughie.
Yeah. That's a toughie, more people, because this amazing woman on the screen is her godmother.
I love her.
I'm not quite sure she saw that episode that day.
I did, but it still hits the same. It hits like it's brand new because she's so.
I think all the facial
so
expressions I made that day, I was just making again as I watched it.
Yeah, I think I saw you during that, and I'm like on the other side doing almost the same ones, trying to really empower her, but just loving her all at the same time, and just so proud of her. My God, that was such a good one. That took a lot of bravery. That took a lot of guts. Yeah,
that's right. As long as you feel at home in your body, we are all beauty. Absolutely. I think that feminism is something that our girls are definitely pushing themselves through. Like, they're finding out who they are. Mm-hmm. They're not dealing with anybody's stuff. I mean, even in watching that episode, she has come such a long way from when we found out she had the eating disorder till today. She has come such a long way from, and my eyes are watery because I'm so proud of her. Mm-hmm. Because society will have you believing, and men and different people will have you believing that the perfect body is this skinny person with these perfect abs. And we walk around, and I've been guilty of it. Mm-hmm. I've been guilty of it. I've shamed myself on my body because society has made us believe that you got to have the perfect body. And if you don't, you need to get plastic surgery and you need to look better. And men are just like, she's fat. She's not good enough. She's not worth it. And feminism encompasses everything, right? Not just weight, encompasses everything. But that one part of the show was major for me because she owned up to something that she's dealt with. But it's happened because of society and the norms that society wants us to live under. And it was hard to hear that day. And it was hard to watch now, but not hard because I didn't want her to, because I was super proud of her, but just hard to hear because nobody wants to hear that their child is suffering through that. But she's come such a long way.
She has. And we want to create such a protective bubble for our children, period. But we all know that sometimes the best lessons are the hardest ones learned, are the ones that bring the most pain. And hopefully they can have that support system like Alina has with you, to be able to know the difference between I'm going to just let this completely ruin me, or I'm going to walk away with the lesson from this. And I think that, it's wasted energy if you don't walk away with a lesson after having some really traumatic, bad experiences, and whatever that lesson it is very specific to the person. But she's amazing. I mean, yeah, she's definitely a lot different. And I know her passion, even when talking about feminism, I was excited for that because she and I have those conversations. Yeah. I mean, all the time. And and talking about, what it essentially is, which is like equality and, thinking that if you're a feminist, that means you don't shave your armpits and you don't marry men, or, you just like, it's just about being equal, so having these conversations about that. And I mean, it's also important to remember that there's feminism that affects different socioeconomic people. Like in the hood, feminism is different. I mean, people have to deal with food insecurity and lack of access to really strong education or healthcare. I mean, look at the COVID-19 vaccination and how many people weren't getting access to that in these specific areas of the city. So, I mean, it's just about equality and just treating everyone with fairness. I mean, women in particular, it's a huge topic because, again, it's hundreds and centuries of women just not being treated fairly, period, just like humans. So I really love that she believes in that very strongly. I always told her, I'm like, that's going to be my women's studies major that goes to law school. And she's going to be the one fighting those fights for us.
She is. She really, really is. Ray wrote, forgetting is difficult. Remembering is worse. And that is the absolute truth. And I think that could go for a whole lot of different things. A whole lot of things, because like when you break up with someone, you don't remember all the hard times. What you remember is all the good times. So even though you should be thinking of the negative to get you away from that relationship, you only think about the good times, which is exactly what everything she said, like that can be for a lot of different things. He also wrote, Alina is an example of a strong young lady that can overcome obstacles with a great support team. We love you, Alina. Yes, she can. She is an amazing example. And I love when she's on and she speaks her mind. Carmen Gonzalez said we should have a session with teenage girls. Carmen, we will do that again. Thank you for that. We did have the youth edition, the youth perspective, and actually both of our daughters were on. But that will be great to do again. And listen, I invite our guests to always make sure that if you have a topic that you want us to speak about, that you let us know, because we take that into perspective, we write them down, and we make these shows happen, even if that's what you want. Examples of rape culture: pressure on men to score, assuming only promiscuous women get raped, defining womanhood as submissive and sexually passive, defining manhood as dominant and sexually aggressive, blaming the victim, she asked for it, trivializing sexual assault, boys will be boys, we must be the change we want to see. Absolutely. We are almost at the 40 mark, and I want to make sure that we have time for our final thoughts. So before we get into all of that, let's talk a little bit about our last video. Ray, throw that up there. Why is it that when it comes to like men and women in a relationship, we can say, I'm not dealing with it, I'm not tolerating it, it's just whatever. But when it's in a friendship, why do we tolerate it for so long? Why do we not see that it's just as bad as that toxic male relationship and my partner because I think oftentimes it's not, come on, you have abusive friendships, but most of the abusive friendships are not like physical. Most of the abusive friendships are emotional. So we don't see it quickly, but we will accept it a lot longer than we'll accept or tolerate a man's bullshit or another partner's bullshit. Because a man will cheat on us, or a man will disrespect us or hit us, and we'll be like, screw him, I'm not dealing with it. But then you'll have a friend who for years made you feel like shit, and you just accept it for longer because you're just like, it is what it is. Why don't we hold it at the same plateau, since they're both relationships that are being a part of our life?
So I can't say why we do, because I know people who don't accept it on any level. I don't take it from my friends. I don't take it from my partner. I don't take it from my family. And I think that sometimes when people do take it from a friendship is because we have labeled these relationships as like, that's my sister, that's my brother. You know what I mean? And we're more understanding of them. We also aren't intimate with them. And there's intimacy in that relationship, but there's not a physical intimacy there, connection where like, I give you my all to my partner. My friend, I'm not giving my friend my all. My friend tends to be the person that is like a listening ear, fun, relax, like chill. But your partner gets the good and the bad, the bitter and the sweet. You know, and granted, your friends get some of that, but it's usually not directed at them, right? Like usually they're just your sounding board and all that. And I feel like we just make up excuses for them because we have like a sisterly or brotherly love towards them. That's my reasoning. I'm not saying that's everybody's reasoning, but I think that you have that connection. You also end up incorporating them into your everyday life. So sometimes they end up being your kids' godparents. They end up being like, business partners, or like things where it's like, I can't just be like, deuces, I'm out, like this relationship ain't working. It's no different actually, like as you break it down to like a romantic relationship. But I think we do make excuses for them. We have a different kind of compassion for them.
That's a serious one. Yeah. I think Amanda hit it on the nose about 4 or 5 times.
Oh my God. And it's interesting to hear this and to kind of tie it into the other 3 videos. I mean, you probably could say abusive friends are experiencing trauma. Abusive friends think that there should be ways women behave with one another, so it's like, not being fair and equal. It's interesting how they're all kind of tying together at this point. But, I personally, and I've shared this with you, I think friendships are like relationships you have to nurture and care for and love to some degree the way that you do relationships with a partner. Amanda is right, though. There's no intimacy there. That's like physical intimacy, but there's other forms of intimacy there. And maybe that makes it feel justifiable and behaving in ways that are abusive. I also think, and this is what's really great, again, about your platform, is defining what abuse is. It's like people understanding that it's not just physical, obviously, right? That's like a driving force behind a lot of what you do. But, the things you say, and the ways that you behave. You can be a very controlling friend. You can be a friend who may make comments about that other friend's weight all the time, and not realize the effect you're having on them. I do think getting older, it plays a huge part in it. For some people where you kind of say, I'm just not dealing with this shit anymore.
Yeah.
Or you say, you know what, I've invested all this. I don't want it to go away, but things need to change. Right. And I also think people need to be introspective on themselves, right? And say, what have I done to add to this? Yes. And I do that all the time. I'm not a perfect being. And there are times where I say, you know what, I could have done things better.
Yes.
In certain instances. I let my own pride get in the way. I didn't make the best decisions in those moments. I let my little wannabe tough self say, you know what, screw it, I'm not going to happen. That I say, you know what, I probably could have invested in that. But we have to be careful, because I think that sometimes you do that so much that you can hit a point where you are now doing a cycle and you are in an abusive situation where you say, I'm not doing any better by that. I think that was a powerful topic. I think it's tough. I see tons of things on my Instagram from people who are putting up these posts saying about how they're just writing people off. And if you're not part of my growth, you're over it. And I'm like, oh, I'm not the only one feeling like things need to be better in my life.
Yeah. That was actually a show. That was our last show 2 weeks ago. And I think that it was such a dynamic conversation. And it was a shame because of a song we played at the beginning. Facebook threw us off. So they blocked us. It continued on YouTube, but it threw us off. But because it was such a powerful conversation, we decided to do a part 2. So in July, we are doing a part 2 with Amanda again. But everything you're saying is exactly what I said. There was a moment in that conversation where Amanda said, I want to give you an example. What if what you're asking from these people is that they do this and they do that to change the friendship? What role do you play? And I said, well, that is when we have to accept accountability as well for ourselves. Sometimes where we're in friendships, where it's so easy for us to say, she pissed me off. She said this to make me mad. She didn't do this, and that. But we don't turn around and say, okay, so what role did I play in that? How did I piss her off, or how did I do the wrong thing? And I've been guilty of that. You've been friends with me for more than 20 years. I've been guilty of that eons and eons in time. And I am now at the adult age where I can say I have played a huge role in a lot of damage that has been done in friendships. I can say that, and I can say that, and I accept it. The problem for me is that we all have to be able to accept that. We all have to be able to say we all played a shitty role. And we have to either, like you said, some we repair, some we don't repair, but everyone has to know their role. Even when, like in a regular relationship with a man and a woman, It can't just be she's 100% wrong. No.
Mhm. And you have to
Everybody has
compromise.
played a role. There has to be a compromise.
There has to be. I think that you treat relationships with friends almost like a relationship, right? You kind of
Right.
everything you just said, and you gotta nurture it too. And all right, if you want A and B, then I'll give you A and B, but maybe I'm not comfortable with B. Can we, work on making that better? And there has to be compromise if it matters to you. Now, some people might look at friendships and say, I'm fine with it ending. It's good. Let's just let it go.
Right.
And that's fine too. Kudos to them. I would prefer not to do that, but if it came to that, you have to respect it as well.
Yeah. Another question she asked was, what if you both say what you have to say, and then what did she say? But you don't agree with what the person's saying. So because I had said, if I want to call you out on your shit, please call me out on mine. Tell me, don't let all this time pass and you don't tell me, because I know that I've done that. I know that I have had an issue and that I didn't immediately speak about it with the person. I just let time pass. And then I just assumed what I heard was the truth. And then when I finally spoke to that person months later, they're like, we could have solved this shit months ago. Yeah. But you let it ride, you let it fester, you let every time you saw me, you let it be that we had animosity. But if you said something then, we could have just squashed it. So she said, what happens if they tell you and you don't agree with it? And my reply was, that is when we have to say, okay, we're old enough to get to a point where we say, all right, I may not agree with what you're saying to me. I don't see that in myself, but I'm willing to make the effort to change it. Or we also need to be at a point where I can agree to disagree with you and be okay with that. We have to be able to be okay with it though. We can't say it and be like, well, I'm not okay with it. We have to be okay with saying, we're going to agree to disagree, because if we okay with it, means we need to leave it there, and that's it. Instead of holding it against one another forever. Ray wrote, there comes a time to stop trying to make things right with people that won't own their own part in what went wrong. And I think that in the end ends up being the most difficult part. Yeah. Because I feel like if we've come to this point where we're sitting together and just nothing can be handled, it's like, all right, we're not going to keep having the same discussion.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
You got to be able to hear and receive it. Like if someone comes to you who you trust, now it has to be a good source, right? It has to be someone where you're like, holy crap, if this person came and told me that this is what I need to do, I have to be receiving of that because they're coming from a good place. And maybe I didn't realize I was doing it, right?
Right.
But you have to be leery of people who tend to always want to point out your negative. And that's when it becomes abusive, right? That's when it starts to become traumatic, and all the other things start to come into that as well.
Right. Yeah. I'm telling you, it was a spicy conversation. And I was so sad that people didn't get to see it. And that's why we're doing a part 2, because I think that there's so much that can be said about abusive friendships, because like every subject we talk about, people don't know it until you kind of like put it in their face type of thing. And I think that so many times when we think of the word abuse, we think of physical, or we think of a man and a woman. We think of partnerships, could be female and female, whatever. But when it comes to friendships, we don't see the abuse as abuse a lot of times. We see it as, oh, that's just how she is. Just get over it. That's how he is. That's how he reacts to stuff. And we don't realize that some acts can be toxic, which is the word that we used a lot that day. Can be toxic.
It's a good word. And I think too, in working on how we communicate with each other, right? I mean, if we could find words to share with each other that weren't always so like accusatory, the tone, working on how to communicate with each other more effectively, that would help. I mean, because really that's what friendships are. All you can do is talk.
Right.
You don't have anything else going on. But yeah, toxicity is a good word for it. And it exists. And sometimes it takes a really long time, I guess, to see it and to be able to decide if it's for you or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Miss Evelyn, it's 50 minutes in, and I think that we've had some good videos thrown at us tonight. Good job in the background, Mr. Producer.
Good job. Good job.
He said, guess what time it is?
I'm scared.
I know, so am I. Look, I'm like.
I know, I'm like, who's popping up? Is he popping up?
No, it's time for final thoughts.
I thought it was like party time. All right.
It can be. He normally would say, where?
There it is. Final thoughts.
So we're going to give our final thoughts. I'm going to go to the back like I do, but pretty much give your feelings on everything that we spoke about tonight. and I'll be back when you're done.
You know what, my feelings are, these are 4 areas that we don't discuss enough, and I am so incredibly happy that Love Shouldn't Hurt has decided to kind of focus this. And initially we were trying to figure out, when you started this, like, how can we talk about it, and it has to be so much more that we could do with this, and realizing that there are so many different layers that contributes to abusive behaviors, period, and learning about those behaviors and understanding them a little bit more. It's really difficult to do it in a 1 hour time frame, but it's still 1 hour more of information that exists out there that didn't exist before. And hopefully it's because you have guests on your screen that are identifiable, and they're knowledgeable, and they truly care and are passionate about the messaging behind it. And that's why I think these 4 topics, I don't know how you hammered it down to 4, because I was like, good luck. You have so many you can draw from that each and every time I watch it, I'm completely blown away and have all these thoughts about times I'm texting you and saying, I can't believe that happened. But you did it. And I think you chose 4 really good, strong topics. And I'm thankful to be able to share my thoughts in a much more public forum, because normally, again, it's usually me texting you and talking to you about it. But I think if I could just draw or even contribute to anyone, is just learn from this. Don't sit somewhere and think it's all ridiculous. Just take a moment to say, you know what? Could I gain something from what they just said? We are not the, how should I put this? We are not the top researchers on a lot of these topics, where a lot of us are talking from past experiences. Some of us have some education to back what we've said and done. Some of us have read research and done stuff like this, or are part of committees at different points of our lives that kind of contribute to these conversations. But most of all, we're just people. So I hope that everyone draws from these conversations and just continues to learn. I know I do. So I want to just thank you for the opportunity for having me here today and sharing my thoughts and just being a part of this conversation. It's been real fun.
Well, thank you as always, because you're phenomenal.
Well,
and
thanks.
I love to not only just come on and have conversations with new people, but I do like to have conversations with people who are part of my life, because I think that sometimes the best conversations and the best input come over just girlfriends talking, like girlfriends sitting around like a tent and having a conversation, and we're just like, damn, that's a good topic, or, you know, dang, that's a conversation that I wish people would hear. And just having people just be open. And I think that even though this forum is public and people can see us, it does still feel like 2 girlfriends just talking and kind of just getting opinions out. And I think that a lot of the topics and the subjects that we talk about are things that people would never probably talk about in public. They kind of would just have closed conversations amongst one another. And I think that it's super beneficial and helpful for people to watch it and say, oh yeah, I've dealt with that. Oh yeah, I've heard of that before and I've experienced it before. And we're able to shine light on that and kind of just discuss the topics other people are not talking about. So we're going to send you to the back, and then you'll be back.
Okay.
So as always, super appreciative for people who are always watching and are constant and avid followers who just are here and just take in what we say. You know, I constantly get messages after from people who say, I missed your show, I'm going to watch it later. And I'll get like all these inbox messages of, oh my God, when she spoke at 10:12, I liked what she said. And this is why, because I've dealt with this and I've seen this. Or what she said at 5 minutes, oh my God, I dealt with that last week. Or they'll watch the show and they're constantly writing comments underneath and sharing their opinions, or people who did sit and they watched the hour and they got into it with us, you know, just are grateful for us sharing in that time with them. So I'm super, super, uber grateful for you guys being here. I thought that this Express Yourself should be a little bit different so that we can kind of look back. I think sometimes we miss important things or subject matter when we watch the show, maybe because if we're watching it, then something on TV comes on, so we walk away, or the doorbell rings, or our cell phone rings, and we don't get to see the full show. So I like to go back and kind of see where we were at different time, get different opinions. And I thought that it would be super cool to see it today with Evelyn, because she is someone who after the fact will say, I thought this, I thought that. You know, I thought this person expressed themselves well, or this is what I would have said, and this is what my opinion is on it. So I thought she would be a great person to share these conversations with. Victim blaming is something that we speak about all the time. As I stated, even before Love Shouldn't Hurt, we would have conversations about victim blaming a lot. Super important to choose one with her goddaughter because she's played such an influential role in her life. That specific clip was of her speaking about her eating disorder, which is something that I'm super publicly proud of her privately proud of her and in general proud of her. And her godmother has played such a huge impact on her life. Like she's a huge, huge, huge person for her. And I know that seeing her on the screen often, just lights up her heart. And she's always telling me how proud she is of her. And I thought that that was something that she would be able to speak about, because feminism as well, something that, as they stated, those two are like this. They're like toast and jelly. They have conversations constantly. And when it comes to feminism, it's discussions that they always have. So I thought that was super important. And I'm just giving you input about why I chose the certain videos that I did. Speaking about abusive friendships, absolutely thought that that was important to discuss with her on the screen, because she is one of my closest friends. She has dealt with the good, the bad, and the terribly ugly of me. She has gone through beautiful things with me, ugly moments with me, and she has also had to put me in my place. So I thought that that was super, super important to talk about with her. And generational curses is something that I feel like, we bring generational trauma with us in our everyday. And her, myself, and everyone who work on this show know that no one is perfect. We all live in homes and families who at some point have had something crazy happen to us that we may have experienced and brought with us into now our future, now that we have our children. So I'm always super appreciative of you guys being here. Next week, super excited to say this because we've done it before. We've done it twice. For the third time, next week, we are going to do the male's perspective. We are doing it because we believe that it's super important to hear not only from women, but also to hear from men, and to let people know that women are not the only ones who have an opinion on domestic violence. We will be bringing to the screen an amazing young man who's never been on our screen before, Brian Perez. He is a very, very well-spoken young man, newly college graduate in the past few years. Now he's starting his light off. He's forming who he is, and he speaks so well. He is a phenomenal guy, and I cannot wait to bring him on the screen next week for another male's perspective on domestic violence. So next week is going to be great. We're going to have lots of fun. Thank you guys for joining us and for being here. Let's bring Evelyn back. Hey, there she is again.
Hey.
Want to thank you again for being here, being supportive always of our movement and just everything that we do. Thank you for your input tonight on another beautiful night of Express Yourself. We mixed it up a little bit on you. We kind of threw videos and had you express yourself, but it was a good time, and I think that your input was greatly received.
Thank you. Thank you for having me
in here. Thank you guys again, and we'll see you next week with Brian Perez and the male perspective. Have a good night, everyone. We'll see you all soon.